or 5 months ago. He's okay. He's got arthritis, isn't he? He had quite bad rheumatoid arthritis, so he goes in. He's just same old job.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, man.
He's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody that meets John remembers John.
Yeah.
He brings so much energy to everything that he does. He's amazing.
That's true, man. Big character.
So funny. Off the mat, doddering around. He's like, as soon as he gets on the mat, like, boom.
Yep.
Back to being sort of 30 years younger again.
Yeah. That's awesome, right?
Right.
The fountain of youth.
Yeah.
Really is.
The tatami.
Yeah. Okay, I'll hit record on the thing for the audio version. Do the intro. Go to this computer. Okay, we're recording. So we're super lucky. We've got the man responsible for putting a blue belt on Robin and I's waist, which is a questionable responsibility. We've got Professor Mike Diaz. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks for doing it.
Anytime, man. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Time. How many years now, Rob? Rob will remember exactly.
Yeah, 7.
7 years. Wow.
Oh, man.
I saw it flash up on Facebook the other day. It was like a 7-year anniversary. It was quite recent, right?
Yeah.
I can't believe how fast.
It flies. And we were just saying, Mike, you've not changed a single bit since we saw you last. What's the secret? Is it the clear air up in the mountains?
I think that probably has a little bit to do with it. And I don't know, jiu-jitsu. You know, jiu-jitsu keeps you young, the fountain of youth. Look at Master Sauer. That guy's like a little kid.
True. So you put Pete just said there that you put the blue belts on Pete and Rob. It was actually my first stripe as well that I managed to earn that weekend. So,
nice.
And we always remember back to that test because it went on. It seemed to go on forever. It was the best test I've ever seen. It was amazing.
Well, I only had a little bit of time with you guys, so I wanted to make a good impression.
You certainly did that. It's the stuff of legend now, that test.
There was a moment on the seminar afterwards, the second seminar afterwards, and I can't even remember what we were learning at that point. And you came over and you said, "You two are done, aren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, we're done."
Yeah. Too much information.
Yeah. The brains had melted completely. It was awesome.
Great times, great memories.
Yeah.
So Mike, I mean, we were lucky to sit down and talk with Master Sauer a couple of weeks ago, and he mentioned, like we said, like, has he ever had like children train right the way through to adults, and and been able to put black belts on? And he mentioned that you were one of the first people that started with him in Utah. So how old were you when you started jiu-jitsu?
Oh, I was older. So I started, I was probably like 26, 27 when I started with Master Sauer. But, we got to think about the timeline because, and that was in 96 when I started. And, the UFCs had only been out for a little while. And so, and in the US, there was only a few places that had jiu-jitsu. But I got super lucky because Master Sauer happened to be in Utah. But I was a little older when I started.
And so that's what was 96. I can't do the maths. It's at the end of the day for us already. But yeah, long time training.
20-some years.
Yeah. And I mean, for you, what's the secret for you still being on the mat after all of those years? Because some people fall by the wayside quite quick, right? But
yeah, I think about that question a lot. It's kind of funny. So I heard Master Sauer say one time that Elio Gracie told him, he's like, oh, you're a black belt now? Come see me when you're a coral belt. And can you imagine like that? Like life has to accommodate you to stay on the mat. I mean, there's so many things that can happen over your life, you know, that could keep you from being on the mat. So one thing is just, I think life has to accommodate you, you know, being able to stay on the mat. You know, the other thing is, you know, when you're coming up, like, I think you start to learn that things will pull you away. And if it's something you really want, you just make it part of your life. You know, like my girlfriend, when we met, I was a purple belt, and she would always say, hey, Mike, let's go to the movies tonight on Wednesday night. And I was like, I don't go to the movies on Wednesday night. You know, like I train on Wednesday night. And I just, you know, I made my life, I kind of organized my life around jujitsu. And then she started to see that's how my life was. And so, you know, not only did life accommodate me time, you know, and health and everything to be on the mat, I also made it my life's work to be on the mat too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, that's the only reason Robin and I started our own class, was so that it became a job, so that there was no reason anyone could say you can't go. We've got to do it. It's work.
Yeah, I got to go to work.
I got to work.
Yep.
Yeah, you got to.
But you know, and then it's never work. You know, if you're doing what you love, I mean, it's not work anymore.
Shh! Don't tell them that.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah, we don't want your wife finding out.
Yeah.
I mean, how far into training did you realize that it was something that you wanted to do forever?
Well, you know, so before I did jujitsu, I grew up doing martial arts. So I did like karate when I was a young kid. And then before I went into the military, I was doing martial arts. And then when I went into the military, I was still doing martial arts. And then when I saw the first UFC, I was like, man, I need to do this. So it had always been a part of my life. But once I found jujitsu, you know, there was no turning back. Like, that's what I was going to do. And it's kind of funny. You know, I used to think if I made it to the gym 3 days a week, that was pretty good. And then it was like, man, if I train, you know, 6 days a week, that's real good. And then it was like, well, if I train twice a day, man, that's even better. But then what happens is when you have that mindset, twice a day becomes the norm. That becomes the normal. And then it's not normal. I'm like, man, I only trained once today. What's going on? And it's okay when you're young. Like, when you're young, that's good mindset. It's a good mindset. You know, it can be a good mindset. As you get older, and depending on how hard you're training, you have to make sure that you have time to recover and make sure you're not overtrained all the time. But, you know, it's just funny. I was always part of my life. And then I just became more part of my life when I found jiu-jitsu. You know?
I understand. I think it complements so many other aspects of your life as well. I know for me, it's kind of like calmed me down to a degree. But yeah, it's amazing. Like, it just bleeds into everything else that kind of is important to you. And
For sure. I used to say, if I ever met the guy I used to be, I'd kick his butt. like that guy, I don't, you know, like, that guy was just not the guy that, you know, I probably wish I could have been or would have been, you know. But jiu-jitsu has that way, man. It humbles us, makes us better people. That's why I think right now, with everything the world is going through, yeah, we need jiu-jitsu more now than ever. You know, it's such a gift, you know, for people, that we need to figure out ways to, you know, to still get it out to people, to help people.
Yeah. You were saying just before we went live, one of your schools is forced to be closed, but one of your schools is still open. So are the people traveling down the mountain to the one in the valley to train, or is that's locked down as well?
Yeah, I don't allow them to do that.
Yeah.
You know, but, you know, man, I think that there's other ways to train. I think that, there's things that we can do off the mat during this time that are super beneficial, that are super healthy for us, that keeps our mind on jiu-jitsu. And I'm not talking about using a grappling dummy. Like, I'm talking about just health-wise and good for our body and good for our brain. I do the Ginastica. You guys have seen the Ginastica. And part of the Ginastica is the breathing. And I think the breathing is one of the most healthiest things we can do for ourselves. And it's so good for the game of jiu-jitsu. Like, if you're a competitor, it's so good for your mind as a competitor and your emotional state. And so now during this time when we haven't been training, like, I tend to find myself doing that breathing a lot more. And, hopefully when we get back to training, I can still incorporate that type of training in. Because when we start training and grappling, that's all we want to do. You know what I mean? But I think there's other things we can take advantage of right now for sure.
Can you, obviously we've experienced it and we've done a class with you, like before the seminars as the warm up, and Robin's been tuning into your classes you've been doing for the association and stuff. And we've definitely been using it, just during the week to keep ourselves going. And can you explain to like the other guys, what is Ginastica and how did it start and how did you get into it and kind of that stuff?
For sure. Man, what is Ginastica? That's like a big question right there. And I'm still trying to figure that out. And it has so many things that it does for me. Right now, for me as an instructor, it's kept me connected with my students. For me as an instructor, when a guy comes in off the street, I ask his body to do things in jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, we ask people to do things with their bodies that sometimes they're not ready for. And it helps those people. It helps get their body ready for jiu-jitsu. Then all the way up to like a high-end competitor. A high-end competitor can have the best body in the world, but if he doesn't know how to use that body, it doesn't benefit him. And so that's where jiu-jitsu comes in there. For the mental emotional state, it's huge. Because in jiu-jitsu, those are two huge components of jiu-jitsu that we tend not to think about sometimes. We're doing it when we train. When we train, our mind's 100% involved. But maybe we're not real conscious of how it's involved. The emotional state is huge when we train, when you're grappling. And so that's where the Ginastica comes into play there. And the physical part of it, for me, I've lifted a lot of weights. I've done a lot of things like that, which are great. And they have their purpose, their timing for that. But the Ginastica helps with relaxing the body, keeping you strong, the flexibility in it. I've taken like an Olympic lifter, had him do Ginastica, and his Olympic lifts went up, and so it just helps bring out the best in your sport, in what you do. And so I think that could be a good definition of Ginastica.
Nice.
One of the always take sound bites from people, and one of the things that always lives with me from when we met you in the UK was you always said it's better to be flexible than strong. So it's better to do yoga or some sort of stretching instead of lift weights.
Well, I mean, like I said, they both have their place. I think that when you're starting out in jiu-jitsu, it's way better to have some flexibility. Because if guys come in, and they've been, slinging a lot of heavy weights and they're super tight, and now we ask them to train jiu-jitsu, they can get hurt. Mm-hmm. But you see guys at a high level that have been training for a long time, and then they incorporate the strength training in, it really ups their game. So I think it depends on where you're at in your career. It could be where you're at in your training. If you're training for a fight, you probably want to do your strength training towards the beginning, I would think. So it just depends, but they both have their benefits for sure.
So I was going to say, what got you started in it? How did you sort of get all your training in it, and did you fly out to to train in Brazil for a while, or how did you kind of come across it?
Man, so the story's crazy. So back in the 90s, maybe 2000, I don't know. I remember that movie Choke.
Yeah.
So that movie Choke came out, and I remember seeing Hickson doing the breathing and them doing the animal movements. And I remember asking Master Sauer about it, and that's when I first heard of Alvaro Romano. And I was like, man, I would love to do this. And back then, you know, I was like a maybe blue belt, purple belt. Well, a lot of years went by, and after I got my black belt, I was looking for something to make my game better, you know, and I didn't know what that was. You know, I'd been doing a lot of other lifting programs and stuff like that, but I wanted something. And life just accommodated me, and I was able to meet Alvaro Romano. And he actually came to my school in Park City, spent a week there with me, and we trained for a long time. I mean, it was hard. Like, he put me through like some of the hardest workouts ever with no weights, all body movement. And that was my first introductory to Ginastica. And I still didn't understand it because it doesn't mimic jujitsu. Like, you know, when you do a kata in karate, it mimics the movement. But in Ginastica, it wasn't mimicking the movement. I was like, man, what's going on? He's like, just do what I say. He's like, do it. He goes, you do it, it'll change everything you do. And I was like, I don't know if I believe you, man. But anyways, so then after you know, he left and I had all this information, I didn't know what to do with it, but I started doing what he told me, doing everything he told me. And pretty soon my game did start to change. Like, my movement started to change. My muscle memory started to change. The strength in the movement started to change. And I could see it. And I was like, wow, man, this is pretty cool. And I still didn't understand it. I was just doing what he told me to do. And it kind of changed the whole way I grappled, the whole way I fought. And then this just like one day I was at the gym and we have a pull-up bar. And you know, like, you can do a muscle up and you pull yourself up for a muscle up. Well, I used to do those when I was lifting a lot, and I would do it and I would get up there and it was work. And I'd been doing Ginastica for maybe 3-4 months, and I decided to just try it. And I threw my body up. It's like my body knew what to do already, like how each muscle, how to correspond with other muscles, and boom, I threw myself up. And after that, I was like, man, there's something definitely to what he's teaching me. And so since then, I meet with him at least once a year. I've done a couple camps with him in San Diego, which are amazing. You get to see a lot more of what Ginastica can do for you when you actually do a camp with him. You know, it's pretty amazing.
So how much of your week, Mike, is you know, full on training, jiu-jitsu? How many like Ginastica sessions do you get in? What's your balance?
Man, I've had a hard time finding balance. Like, for the most part, I'm probably overtrained a little too much because I teach so much, but I grapple with all my guys. Like, I'm on the mat every night with my guys, and they see, like, if I'm tired, they're like, man, I'm going to go like tonight, you know? So I train with all my guys. I was teaching 2 Ginastica classes a week also, but I kind of laid off on that. So what I do now is every class I teach, I do a Ginastica, like 20 minutes to a half hour, and then I start the class. So I'm not doing the full on Ginastica. And, you know, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to kind of pick and choose who I train with, you know. Definitely, you know, I try to train with everybody, but not every night anymore. You know, I got a couple black belts under me now that are super tough guys. So I kind of let them do it, but I still like to get out there. You know, you can't keep me off the mat for sure.
That's good.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, actually, I was going to ask earlier, but you said, you know, if you met the guy that you were before, you'd kick his ass.
Yeah.
Is there a prime Mike Diaz? You know, is there a point, you know, like, is the strategy that you know now, training jiu-jitsu for as long as you have, would you still beat any Mike Diaz of the past?
Man, I mean, right now, I think I would, because it probably wouldn't be the way I'd want to. Like, that's the thing that we have to understand. Like, as we get older, or even like when you have an injury and you train through your injuries, like I've always been lucky enough that I've been able to train through injuries, but you can't always fight the way you want to fight, So like if I wanted to go in there and just beat him up, I probably couldn't. I'd have to like trick him, slow the game down a little bit and then catch him. And that's how I kind of, when I grapple now, that's kind of where I'm at. I still like to be game. I still like to go for it, but I kind of like, try to trick the guy, defense is your best friend. If guys don't learn how to defend early in the belts, then they pay for it later. And I think that as you, become a black belt, if you have good defense, that will keep you on the mat a long, long time. So to answer your question, I think that right now my knowledge of what I do is better. Physically wise, probably not the best, but my knowledge is better.
It's nice to hear that, actually, because I don't think I've ever thought about it like that before. Can I always beat an earlier version of myself? But to hear you say that the knowledge and the tricks that you're still picking up, you'd be well prepared to be able to beat you in the past. That's great. It's a reason to keep training.
Sure. That's top. Well, I've seen guys, that come in and you're going to progress no matter what. Like if you're on the mat and you come in, you're going to progress. But you have to think like it would be horrible to all of a sudden be 40 years old and be on a downward slope and be like, man, like everything that I did for all those years, I'm losing. Like I would want my money back. Be like, give me my money back. You know what I mean? Like I trained all those years and now I'm here at this age and like I'm going down. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think that if we learn the lessons we're supposed to learn coming up, then when we get into 40, 50 years old, we still have those lessons. And maybe we're not as physically fit or everything on that side, but we're still able to compete. We're still able to take class. And that's worth it to me, because we spend so much time coming up. It would be horrible if it all disappeared,
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, you go on, Pete. You first, mate.
No, go on. If that's follow up,
No. All yours, buddy. All yours.
So, going back in time a little bit, what were those early days when Master Sauer first got to Utah like? What was the academy like, and what was the atmosphere, and how was that?
Man, it was like the Wild West. It was crazy, like because we had this gym on State Street, on State Street in Utah, and it was in a part of town that was really busy. You had like not the best people walking up and down the street all the time, but people would come in the gym and want to fight. They'd want to fight Master Sauer. It was crazy. But what was cool was there was a group of us that seemed to all come together at that one moment in time. And we were all, pretty young. And all of us were super game. And we all were really good friends, but super competitive. And you never wanted to miss a class because you were worried your friend or somebody picked up something a little bit more, and so that was really special. You probably heard of a lot of those guys already, that are, Johnny and James and Paul. And everybody was so tough, but what was really cool, and I look back at the pictures now, Master Sauer was like his neck and everything, and he would come in on Saturdays, and like on Saturday, he would teach throughout the week, but on Saturday mornings, man, we would pick teams and he would be in the line. And I always wanted to not be on his team. I wanted to be on the other team because then that means I got to grapple with him, and I remember those times. It's crazy. And when you grappled with him, like, it wasn't like, you grapple with a guy, sometimes it hurts. Sometimes you're like, oh man, grapple with him. He tapped you and it didn't even hurt, you just had to tap, so it was really special. It was like really special. Probably the best years of my life, probably back then, super fun.
There's and how many of those guys do you reckon are still training? There seems to be actually quite a high number of the guys still about and still training. And
yeah, everybody that I mean that I was friends with and that came up, they're still training. They all have their own schools. Some of them moved, out of Utah and are running schools other places. But man, for the most part, everybody that I came up with, that I was friends with, are still on the mat. Probably like, so when Master Sauer left, he left the school to, the black belts there. And I think when he left, he said he had like 12,000 people that came through the academy. 12,000 students came through, but he promoted 12 black belts at that time. So the percentage was like not real high of people that got black belts, but out of all of us we all came up together, we all eventually got our black belts from him. So I think that's super cool. I used to think that was something that happened everywhere, but I'm not sure it does. I think it might have been just a special moment in time for all of us.
Yeah, you don't see too many places where there's that number of black belts still hanging around. And
yeah, man. And what's crazy is everybody super tough. Like they're still super tough, like, man, like I go train with some of them, man, and they're like so amazingly good, and I think we got lucky, I really do. I think that at that time in America, you had the Gracies, Machados. Pedro, I think, was, he was in Utah, and we got him for a lot of years. Like he wasn't traveling a ton back then, so we were able to train under him for a long time. And I think we got super lucky that way.
I was going to say, Mike, if all of you 12 got together again today, who would you want on your team? Who would you want on the other team?
Man, that's the thing. Like I go down to Unified Jiu-Jitsu like when they're open and I train, and every train is hard. Like it doesn't matter anymore, man. Like, it's funny. Like and it's funny. Like I got a friend who came up with all of us named Chris Wells, and I don't know if you guys have heard of him much or not, but man, the guy is tough. He grew up wrestling, so he had a huge wrestling background, black belt in jiu-jitsu under Master Sauer. But every time I see him, I know that it's going to be a fight. And it doesn't matter where we're at. And we're friends. I like him. He likes me. We get along great. But the minute we shake hands, man, it's going to happen. We did a seminar together. We did this seminar, and it was super packed. So they wanted everybody to do like kind of like a chill roll, not too crazy, just kind of flow around. And at the end, and we did the seminar. And at the end, he's like, "Hey, let's train." And we shook hands. Man, we were like all over the place. But it's just because I know what it's going to be like when me and him go, and I'm thankful for it, because man, that guy's made me better over all the years. Made me so much better.
So you starting, when Master Sauer came into Utah, I guess challenge matches and things like that would have been, well, not challenge matches necessarily, but people would have come in and tried their martial arts out against, in the school. Would you have been involved with those?
So I wasn't, I was there for a few of them. Well, what would happen would be like, if somebody came in and they wanted to fight Master Sauer, he'd be like, "Well, you got to get through like my purple belt first," or something like that. But we had guys not only that would come in that want to fight off the street, we would have guys that would come into Salt Lake to prepare for fights, because altitude, but back then in the country, there wasn't a lot of places where you had somebody like Master Sauer. Mm-hmm. So I remember, man, I probably might have been just a white belt. And what's his name? Clever came in. He was training for a fight. And man, I put the gloves on with him and got the crap beat out of me. I mean, there's pictures of it. And I used to be big. I used to lift a lot of weights. I was a big guy. But I mean, it happened quite a bit back then.
I always, I mean, we're lucky to be as close to kind of the source of jiu-jitsu as we are. It's not like hundreds of years have passed. We're close to the source still, and we're fortunate. We don't really have to prove that jiu-jitsu works. Everybody knows that jiu-jitsu is a tried and tested martial art. But I wonder now, with the black belts that get to a black belt stage now, whether we'll ever be as good as you guys having got to black belts. I just think it's different levels. It's yeah.
I think that the guys that are coming up now get better quicker. You have more people to train with. When we were coming up, the only black belt I ever saw was Master Sauer. And then another black belt showed up, Alex Derazans. And man, those were the only two black belts I ever saw. I never saw, for a lot of years, I never saw a brown belt. I never saw one. A purple belt was probably the highest ranking belt in the school. And so nowadays, man, guys come in, as blue belts. You can train with a bunch of black belts. You can train with a bunch of brown belts, a bunch of purple belts. So I think guys are getting quicker, better. But like you said, a little bit removed from the source, and I think we were really lucky. When I look at my black belt certificate, like I don't, when I got it, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I look at it now and it's something that I'm proud of. And it's just the names at the bottom of it. You have like Elio and Hickson and Master Sauer. And I never really used to look at it. And now after all these years, I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I got super, super lucky.
Yeah,
that is amazing.
It's definitely something like, obviously Bill alludes, I think we're thankful for, in that, we have to work a little bit harder with most of the association being out, in the States and stuff like that. But I think we still appreciate, or not think, I know we still appreciate how close that draws us to the history of it, and you guys doing it in the beginning over there. And yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think it matters a lot. I do. I think that, a lot of people are so far removed down the line, but I think it does matter. I think that a lot of people sacrificed a lot for it. Back to the school when we were coming up, there was guys moving from all over the country to Utah. They were leaving their families, their friends, everything, and they were coming to Utah just to train under Master Sauer. So we have to think about that too, because, I say this a lot. Guys wake up, they drive 10 minutes to the academy, and a jiu-jitsu is waiting there for them. Or before, people had to move around the country just to learn a little jiu-jitsu, So super lucky.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when you hear the stories of the jiu-jitsu and how it was tried and tested from old, I don't know whether we're not as tried and tested, I guess, is the message. But I mean, with your academy, do you get the gloves on regularly? You train with strikes or not?
Well, so yeah, we do. We still do that. I run like a real competitive program, super competitive. Like my kids program is very, very competitive. My adult program is competitive, but I like to keep, for like sport jiu-jitsu. But of course, we do the self-defense, and I like to keep the guys, aware of punches always, so they're not putting themselves in bad situations. I probably do it more with the kids than I do with the adults. The adults are hard. It's funny because like an adult, unless they're super competitive, if you put them in really hard situations, you'll lose them. So I need to make sure that I, show them how to defend themselves against punches, stuff like that. But, really slow. But with the kids, I can push them kind of as hard as I want. And I push the kids really hard, like, because I can, and, and the parents support me when I do it, But I think it's an important part. I definitely do. I think it's important that people know how to defend themselves against punches, because after all, that's what we're doing jiu-jitsu for. We're not doing it to win tournaments and stuff like that. We're doing it to defend ourselves,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I see on the social media, it seems to be a lot of pride around when, you know, your kids, they get their promotions, their stripes. There's a lot of love around the place in Utah when there's some ceremonies going on. So no, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, we try to do that for the parents and the kids. I mean, I'm pretty hard on the kids, you know, like I'm friends with all of them. Like they know that I'm friends with them, but you know, there's different ways of thinking of how to train kids, you know, but I refuse to be a daycare, you know, like I want to really put out kids that they get the benefits of jiu-jitsu. And so when they get promoted, we try to make like a big thing because I know they've worked really hard to get promoted.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, in the state that we've been for the last couple of months with the lockdown, the children's program seems to be the bit that's working really, really well, because we do it on the Zoom like this, and you know, the children are in their own homes but training with their parents. So it's a really nice activity for the children to be, you know, strangling their mums and dads, and it's great to see them get their own back.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's really great because, you know, they still are, you're making where the connection of jiu-jitsu that we have in the academy, now they're making that in their home. And I think that's really, really good, man. That's super cool. I'm glad you guys are doing that.
I think it's really powerful. I really hope as well that, having experienced it, you know, with the children, that some of the parents are then interested to maybe get on the mats as well after. My wife, I mean, we're teaching all of the time. Sometimes I can't do it with my youngest, but my wife joins in with him sometimes, and she's amazed. She can't move him when he's, you know, got push base or pull base, and she's like, I can't move him. He's 7, but why can't I move him? It's jiu-jitsu, Joe. It's jiu-jitsu.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it seems to be working well.
Yeah. The other thing I like about that too is like, you know, sometimes as the kids get older, like the dad or something won't come up and just hug the kid, or, you know, they tend to move apart. But with jiu-jitsu, like if they're always grappling, you'll see that a dad will always go up and grab the son, you know, and even if he's grabbing like the choke, it's still a hug. Like there's still that tight connection, you know, that I think is so good for people, you know, really believe in that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it breaks down that thing of people that are a bit standoffish and aren't kind of, you know, like you say, aren't hugging. And, you know, once you've sweat in somebody else's eye a couple of times, then you're buddies, you know, there's no choice.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
that's why we can't get back to the mats, Pete.
What's that? Say that again.
And that's why we can't get back to the mats yet.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can't be sweating in people's eyes right now.
Yes, yeah. It's funny that you say that. We did a team building thing for Johnson and Johnson. Some of their executives came in, and you see them. They come in and they're kind of stuffy, you know, and you know, they weren't really talking too much. You know, I don't think they really knew each other. They were from different departments. And after we get them to like touch, the first part of touching was really uncomfortable for them. You know, like they weren't sure about it. But then after they started moving around, pretty soon someone was laughing, and then they were laughing. And then you could see like they were almost different people from when they walked in the door. You know, like they were more friendly. They were more comfortable around each other. And it was really cool to watch jiu-jitsu do that, like in 1 hour, you know.
I'm fascinated to work out why Johnson and Johnson wanted to put its executives on jiu-jitsu training. Was one of the people already training with you?
Yeah. But it was for like,
that's a strange market to try and get into, Mike. How did you manage that?
But it was mostly for like team building. They wanted to bring the team closer together, and it worked. You know, when they left, they were like hugging each other, so it was good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Mike, loads of people you know, watch this back after, and you know, a lot of the guys that start out quite recently at the school, but they've not, you know, their jiu-jitsu journey stopped too soon because of the coronavirus. I mean, what messages can you give to the new guys, you know, to keep the faith and to stick at it and definitely get back on the mats once this episode is past us.
Man, you know what? They did the hardest thing already, and that was the first thing was walking into your academy. Like, that's so hard for people to do, you know, just to come in the door. And so they did the hardest thing. And so, man, hopefully they will just come right back and see the benefits they can get. You know, when I talk to you guys are happy. You guys enjoy your life. And I think that if people see that, that's what they come back for. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what I come back to jiu-jitsu for. Like, there's days I walk in my gym and I'm so tired, you know, but the minute I see everybody come through the door and they're smiling and they want to be on the mats, I mean, it brightens my day and I'm ready to go. So I think, man, for anybody that started and had to leave, man, you did the hardest thing. The hardest part was the first coming through the door. Now just stick with it and let the benefits come in. You know?
And what would you say is the biggest benefit that jiu-jitsu's given you?
Oh, man. Biggest? Probably humility. You know, I think that's probably the biggest one. You know, I think that, yeah, I there's so many things because it's given me my whole life. You know what I mean? But if I had to pick one thing, like, just able to be like humble about who I am, what I'm doing, where I'm going, you know, and just be able to enjoy and learn, you know, be a constant student, you know, always a student, you know, like I love it when I can go and take a class from somebody, you know, I don't care who they are, man, you got a blue belt that has something to say, I'm going to listen to them, you know? So probably that it's done the most for me.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's part of the hardest bit, isn't it, at the moment for us, especially as we're still in the middle of kind of lockdown, and you know we don't really know when we're going to be able to train properly again. And I think for me, I don't know about the other guys, but it's definitely it's the people and the contact. And like I got to go out for the first time today on the paddleboard, and I got to see just paddling along on the river and just seeing people kind of, you know, although they were social distance, walking with and seeing their friends and stuff, which was obviously for the first time in 6-8 weeks, and just to see people happy and smiling and you suddenly go, damn, it's jiu-jitsu I miss, but it's also the doing jiu-jitsu with other people. It's no good on your own.
Yeah.
it's no fun. Yeah, it's no fun on your own. Like, yeah, definitely the hanging out with people and having fun and laughing whilst you're choking each other. And
yeah, well, it's funny because people people use grappling dummies and I think they're good tool, but people would always bring grappling dummies into my school and I'd throw the dummy out and I'd be like, and then they were like, why do you hate that dummy so bad? And I'm like, it's like, I don't hate the dummy so bad, but I feel like that's not why we do jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Like, we do jiu-jitsu because of you. Like, when I shake your hand, you're a live person and we have this interaction. The grappling dummy does none of that for me. You know what I mean?
I got an armbar on the dummy. I got an armbar on the dummy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You know, there's no give and take, nothing. And so I would always, someone would bring one in and I'd look at Mona, my girlfriend, and be like, what's up with people bringing me these dummies? You know, I really like the human aspect of jiu-jitsu for sure. You know, but
we've heard some awesome concepts from some of the people that we've spoken to up until this point, Mike. And one of the things that we're picking up on is that, you know, it's not just learn the moves. You know, the moves. It gets to a point where actually you understand the moves and you actually start to think bigger than that, and you start to think concepts. I mean, have you got any? What's your favorite concept that you'd share with people? That's not just a move, but you know, that keeps them safe or progressing their jiu-jitsu game.
Man, so I think that you know, the three ways that I look at jiu-jitsu, like defending, establishing position, and attacking. And I think about that all the time. In the beginning, you're always defending. Then you start to learn to keep the position. And if you lose that position, if you have a good defense, you're fine. And then you start to attack. And, when you're higher up in belts, it doesn't matter if you go for the attack first, because you know that you have good defense, right? So having good defense gives you freedom. Like, you're free to do what you want to do if you have good defense. That's why you see like some of these competitors out there, man, they'll give up their back, they'll do all these things because they're confident in their defense. Same with black belts. I think when you get to a place where you have your own school and you see a guy coming in the door and he wants to grapple with you, and maybe his ears are bad, looks really tough, but if you're confident in your defense, then you're fine. So I think the thing to keep to keep you on the mat, to keep progressing, is to always, start with defense first, have good defense, then learn to establish your position, keep your position, and then start working on your attacks. And I think if you follow that, man, you're set up for success for a lot of years. That's what I believe.
Do you think like learning jiu-jitsu at the school where you learned it, being on the receiving end always from those people that you spoke about and Master Sauer, you're always going to be defending, right? So your defense does get better.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, for sure.
I'm always on the receiving end of Pete and Rob, so I feel like for my entire jiu-jitsu career, I've been kind of just trying to stay alive, and that's for me, when I think about jiu-jitsu, it is just about defending. How do I stay alive longer in each match? How do I not get tapped? How do I, I don't even think about the submission sometimes, and then a few months later, I think, I forget the last time I submitted somebody. Should I be putting pressure on myself to go actually out and just, submit people? I don't know. Any advice in that respect?
Well, I think, man, you always want to have good defense, but you always have to have awareness of where you can attack or where you can change the game, and that's why like being calm is so important in jiu-jitsu. Like when we're crazy, we never see opportunity come. And so we can defend and defend and defend, but we have to always be aware of opportunity. And if we don't take advantage of opportunity, that's our fault. You know what I mean? That's our fault. So at some point, we have to take advantage of opportunity. And that may be where your game is at right now. It's at that point of, okay, my defense is feeling really good right now. Now I'm looking for opportunity. Oh, the guy moved his hand. Oh, I trapped his leg. Oh, man, now I'm back in close guard. Opportunity came. You took advantage of it. Now your positioning's better, right? Yeah. And then maybe you're back to defending, maybe past your guard, whatever. But then, oh, there's the arm lock. Opportunity came. And can I capitalize on the arm lock?
I think it's tough, right, for people. We spoke about those ones that are new through the door, because they are always on like the receiving end to begin with. And, you talk to them so much about, don't worry, 6 months down the line, there'll be somebody new that walks through the door that you'll be able to do to them what some of the people are doing to you. And, it's hard sometimes to get them to believe that when every role that they're experiencing, they're struggling or they're suffering. And it's interesting when you see them go through that journey, and you see them start to come out the other side and start to make progress in their sparring. And it's amazing to watch.
The food chain.
Yeah.
You're at the bottom of the food chain sometimes,
Yeah.
But it does get better, right? That's the message we want to tell them all. It does get better. It gets easier as well.
It does get better. At least it gets more interesting always, right? Like it always gets more interesting. But yeah, I mean, like that's your job. As a white belt, you have your job in the academy, and that is your job. As a blue belt, you have a job also in the academy, and all the way up the belts, and so when somebody comes in the academy, their job is to learn to defend, I mean, you know, and jujitsu is the ultimate teacher. You know, I mean, you know, it's sometimes like it's not really the instructor all the time. Like the art of jujitsu will teach you what you need at that time. You know, some guys walk in the door and the first time they grapple, they get really claustrophobic. They can't breathe, you know? And so, you know, jujitsu is going to keep putting them in situations where maybe they're super claustrophobic, you know, and then they have to learn to deal with that, you know? So, I don't know. I don't know if that's what people want to hear, but that you come to the academy to learn. And, you know, as a white belt, there's a lot of lessons you need to learn. You know?
I think it's, I don't think it's a problem letting them know, because it's an inescapable fact, isn't it? It's going to, whether we kind of verbalize it or not, it's going to happen. So
it's the truth. It's the truth.
How often do you...
I mean, there's things you guys can do to help them along that way. You know, I mean, because if you're training with a white belt and, you know, you want to put him in my dog, you want to put him in positions where he has to defend, but then maybe, you know, let him see opportunity to escape and put you in bad positions. So they get a little bit of feeling of success too.
How often do you feel like you kind of, how often do you kind of spend time telling your students about that, kind of saying, look, this is kind of, you know, you're saying about their role in the academy, kind of this is what you should expect as a white belt, as a blue belt, kind of, do you spend any time sort of talking to them about that stuff, or do you just kind of, you know, like you say, let jiu-jitsu teach it, or
let them work it out for themselves?
Well, I mean, they definitely need guidance. You know, I mean, they, you know, if a guy has enough determination to let jiu-jitsu work it out for himself, then he's good. But a lot of people don't. A lot of people need you to tell them, say, look, it's okay, man. We've all been there. All of us have been there. You know, you just need to keep working on this and supporting them through it. You know, then maybe the guy can get through it and move on. Every belt has such important lessons to learn. And if you skip one of those lessons, then you're done. You know, you won't, you know, everybody comes in for a certain reason, and, you know, we want to make sure they get what they really came in for, you know, so we can help them along the way, but jiu-jitsu is going to really make sure they learn it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure does.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think we can all, we can relate to that.
Yeah, but would we want it any other way? Would you want it any other way?
Nope.
No, you can't shortcut it, and I wouldn't want to shortcut it. You know, wherever you get to on this journey, you want to feel like you got there and you earned it, right? You don't want anything to be given. You want it to be earned. So yeah. Just keep tapping me, guys. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey, it's getting hard to get you. What do you mean? Keep tapping me. No, you're saying it like I've got a choice and I can switch it on like that. It's your eye I'm sweating in trying to get you.
Yeah, I know. Mike, I don't know whether you realise this, but you were the start of a series of photographs. You were the first person where I think it was Haldor that took the picture where you were bow and arrow choking Rob. And everybody loved that picture so much that every time we get a different black belt pass through the UK, we try and get a picture of them bow and arrow choking Rob.
Awesome.
But you were the start of that. So yeah, we'll, next time that one pops up on a memory on Facebook, we'll make sure we tag you in it and remind you of that. You started a tradition there.
Nice. I'm proud of that one. That's great.
It was such a good photo as well.
It really was.
I know exactly the photo. I can see it in my head. I know which one it was.
Right. The crazy veins popping out of his head and all sorts of stubborn. He never gives in easy, but yeah.
I think I was holding him and I was thinking, don't tap. See if I can put him to sleep.
And there's another lesson that everybody has to learn.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Cool, Bill, you look like you're going to say something. I was going to.
Me? No. I was going to ask a completely random question. You obviously like your ink there, Mike. What was the last tattoo you got?
Oh, I think it was this one on my hand. rose on my hand. Yeah. So one of my black belts who came up under me is the tattoo artist in Park City, and he's pretty well known. He's a really good artist, and it just so happens that we pretty much have done everything on trade. So I end up all tattooed up, and he gets to train. But he's a really, really super talented artist. So I don't mind. I think I'm done getting tattoos, man. They hurt too bad anymore. But
I think you both got a really good deal though. If he's a good artist, he got some good instruction along the way. So yeah.
That guy's a monster. I don't even like training with him anymore. Both the guys. So the first guy that came up under me, that guy's super talented, man, super tough. But that's like with you guys, like you guys train together all the time. Like you start to figure out someone's timing, and it doesn't matter who's beating who. Like the guy that's getting beat up will one day get there, and and that's what happens with black belts. If you really train a guy, eventually he's going to catch you. That's the beauty of it.
Was that
again, Rob?
I said that's what you want out of it.
Yeah.
I want Bill to get.
That's the mission, right? You're always trying to make people better than you.
I can't remember what Spanish is, but it's something like to the master of the sword. The person that taught you. It's the ultimate sort of sign of respect that you managed to teach that person well enough that they can get you.
Yep, that's the truth, man. You've done your job. Yeah. You did your job if you do that. I mean, people that hold back, I've never understood that. I don't feel like you're doing your job if you're holding back. So, and now every time I see those guys, I'm super proud of how they train. When they train with me, I know I'm in for it because they're so damn tough.
All right, Rob and Pete, Mike's told me I'm coming for you, right? Rob, he's told me I've got to come and get you.
I know you are. I don't even know.
Tell you what, after lockdown, I'm going to have a little bit more mount pressure. I tell you that.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Need to get some Mike classes.
Random question, but what was more proud for you, earning your black belt or putting a black belt on somebody for the first time?
Man, good question. Man, that's a tough one. Right off, my first thought was promoting my first black belt. Man, but I think because when I got my black belt, it was surreal. Like I really didn't ever expect it. I never really thought about it. And when you get it, it's not like you're like, oh, like all of a sudden life changes. You know what I mean? Like It took me probably 3 years before I could ever really, think about, wow, I can wear this belt after I got my black belt. It took me a while. So I think to answer your question, like when I promoted my first black belt, I felt like, man, I did a lot of work on this guy. I was really proud of him. And so probably that.
It's cool. It's really good. Yeah. And you got children, right? So do any of your children train jiu-jitsu?
So I have a daughter and she grew up on the mat. Like I was a single dad. So I would go to work all day and then I'd get home from work. My mom would pick my daughter up from work or from school, drive her to my house. We'd go to the gym. She'd spend all night at the gym. She would do her class. Then I would do 2 classes. So she grew up. It was just part of her life. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't train anymore, but she still thinks she's really tough, But the thing that I loved about it, it wasn't the typical upbringing because, she would be at the gym from like 4 or 5 till 10 at night, so it probably wasn't the best for a little girl to grow up like that. But she was around good people all the time. And she was around people that knew how to work for something they truly wanted. Like that's one thing she saw night after night. She saw that if you want to be great at something, you have to work at it every day. And whether she does jiu-jitsu or does something else, at least she saw that night after night. And so if that's the only thing I could give to her, I mean, hopefully that goes with her rest of her life.
Oh,
you know,
you can't buy a good work ethic, right? So if that's what
No.
she's got out of it, then that's yeah, best lesson.
Yeah.
That's lesson.
And like, I can't remember what we were saying earlier, but it was like, there's not many things left like jiu-jitsu. That how many other things are there apart from a medical degree that take you like 10 years plus potentially to get it, of the hours that you put in and the suffering that you go through in a good way to achieve something that actually no one else really even knows about.
Yeah. True.
You go, oh, I've got a PhD. Everyone's like, oh, cool, well done. You must be really smart. You must have worked really hard for that. You go, I've got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They go, what?
What is that?
What's that?
Yeah, probably your old nephew's got one too.
Well, yeah.
yeah, you hear that.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. That's the important thing. And for everybody else that doesn't know or understand, do we worry about those? But those people that do know, that's what we're working for.
Exactly. Yeah. There's not many things like that where it's like you do it just because you do it and you love it, but regardless of anybody else knowing about it or giving you the applause for it, you just want to do it.
Yeah. But hey, what a great thing for kids though, right? Like there's not many things out there for kids right now that they have to really truly work for to achieve. You know, they have this like participation medals and all these things that you hear about. You know, I don't know much about all that stuff, but I do know that, you know, kids come in here, they work really hard, and you know, you see it, you see the growth, you see the kid grow, you know. So I think it's one of the, like you said, I think it's probably one of the last few things out there that are really that special, you know.
Yeah, bit of resilience for them.
Yeah,
so many good attributes.
Yeah. Go on, Billy. You look like you're going to say something again.
No, not at all. Sorry, I was lost in the world of thought about, you know, children and jiu-jitsu. I teach, you know, my children come to the academy and we teach them. But one of the balances that I find hard to find is, you know, play versus teach. And it's like, you know, they look at me, they just want me to play with them, but I'm trying to teach a move with them, and it's difficult sometimes. And I worry that I'm going to turn them off of training by being too strict. And that's where I went to in my mind. So apologies. Yeah, I just got lost in how do I keep it fun for them.
You know, I think about that too. I think that's super important. But also, like any gift that you want your child to have growing up, like whether like you want them to play the piano, you know what I mean? Like that's a gift that you're giving to your child, and they're not going to appreciate that till they're 20s or in high school and they bust out something that nobody else can do. Then they'll appreciate it. So they don't understand the gift that you're truly giving them yet. And so sometimes I think it's more about consistency. It's like, okay, it's not fun today, but let's do it today, and we'll take a break tomorrow, or let's train all this, but it's just something that we as a family do. You know what I mean? And when we need breaks, we take breaks, and when we do that, and then as long as you have that consistency, then the kid understands, well, this is just something my family does, you know, this is what we do. And then hopefully that can get them to a point where they're in high school and they see the gift that you've given them, you know, and then they'll want to do it on their own. But maybe that's a way of looking at it. You know, it still needs to be fun at times, you know, but I think just consistency and how you work it into your daily life.
My oldest one's having great fun demonstrating some moves, and he's like jabbing me in the neck. I'm like, no, we don't strike, you know, just make a frame. But no, every time, bang.
I like this. He's like, I like this better.
So he's having fun, don't you worry.
Yeah. Beating up dad is always fun, I'm sure.
It is. I can't wait to let him loose on Pete once the lockdown's over. He's going to murder him.
How old is he?
I'm scared.
he's just 9, but yeah, he's a little monster.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the kids, man. The kids are the best. You know, the kids are awesome.
They pick it up so fast.
They do.
So jumping backwards a little bit, we were talking about concepts, and we've asked kind of a lot of people this. Do you think there was a point in which it switched over for you, and kind of, can you remember when that was, of like it switched over from learning moves to actually thinking in concepts and thinking in blocks of things rather than just like, okay, no, Ooper, I need to learn how to do that, right? That kind of, can you remember that kind of that crossover happening?
Probably like purple belt. I think in purple belt, I was because, by the time you get to purple belt, you're starting to figure out your game, whatever it is, like whatever type of game you like. You know how to handle some hard situations. Your defense is probably pretty good, so you have some freedom to kind of play a little bit more, and then, man, like after black belt, I think I probably started learning the most. It took me all those years to get to a place where I could really learn how to use some of these concepts and everything. And what's funny about that is people always ask me, like, what was your favorite belt? And I think the funnest belts that you can wear are purple belt and black belt. Black belt comes with a lot of responsibility. You have a big target on you. And after you can wear it for a while, it starts to become a fun belt. Purple belt, super fun belt. I mean, you don't have a huge target. There's target on you. It's not super big, and usually pretty tough by the time you hit purple belt. So you can have a lot of fun with it. But I think probably those two belts are when I really started to figure out the game a little bit and have some fun with it.
My memories of your game is it just sticks in my head, the butterfly guard.
Yeah.
I've never seen somebody like shrink into the smallest ball, but I was constantly off balance, and I was like flying everywhere. It was like, oh, that's butterfly guard. That's cool. I need to learn some butterfly.
Yeah.
Pete really picked up on that. So Pete's been doing quite a lot of butterfly ever since 7 years ago, and I did quite a lot of butterfly, which we did that weekend as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've both taken quite a lot of what we do directly from that weekend, really.
Nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when you talk about jiu-jitsu games, like the way I'm built, like I personally wouldn't think that I would have the game that I have. Like I play a lot of butterfly, play a lot of guard, kind of stocky, shorter legs, I would think, just from looking at me, I probably want to be like a lot of be on top, a lot of pressure. And I like that part of the game too, but everybody out there knows, like I always play a lot of butterfly guard. I don't mind being on the bottom. I love sweeps. I love to come to the top, but it's just weird how like your game develops, like what fits your body, and what fits your mind, like your style of who you are, how you deal with things. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. We've ended up with this weird like divergence with Rob and I because like you're saying about like we train together all the time, especially at the beginning when it was kind of just us two. So like his game was counters to my game, and my game is kind of counters to his game. We've kind of gone like this, even on the same syllabus, gone like this, because we're always trying to counter what each other learns. So we've got these games that work around each other's.
But it's like rock, paper, scissors, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes as Pete rolls with people and you go, oh, I'm having real trouble dealing with that. And I'm like, what? That doesn't even register. But then I have the same with other people,
Yeah. Yeah. That's weird how styles match up for sure.
Human chess.
Yeah. Best game ever.
Yeah. 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 It's weird. Yeah. Like Rob said, from that weekend, kind of, I then went, oh, butterfly guard, I like that. So then I've worked on that really hard. And then Rob's picked up more on the arm wrap stuff and kind of gone harder with that. And yeah, it's weird.
Well, you guys get exposed to a lot. You get a lot of really good instructors that come out to see you guys. So you get a lot of good exposure. So that's good. A lot of things to pattern your games off of.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're very lucky. We get like you say, a broad sort of look at loads of different things with, with you and with Keith and Professor Manganello quite, the most often obviously as our sort of lead. And then, Master Sauer, whenever we can get to see him. And
Luis and Mike, we're blessed. We're blessed.
Yeah.
People in the club don't know how good they've got it.
They don't. They don't know.
Yeah. And I guess because we're purple belts, we've got to bring that talent in. But it's kind of a bit rare, isn't it? I guess, because a lot of people will be at a club and they'll get seminars from other people coming in now and again, but they'll get, they've got their black belt kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite nice. They get a good spread of people. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, and the level that comes through there,
Mind blowing.
What do you as someone who obviously spent a lot of time with Master Sauer, we've said this before, where we've been at seminars with Master Sauer and we've seen, whichever black belts are there of his, and he'll show something and they'll look at each other and go, I've never seen that before. Even after training. Do you still get that? Do you still get that when you train with him?
Man, so yesterday, were you on was it yesterday or the day before? I forgot.
Can't remember. The day before, yeah.
He was doing the arm in guillotine defense.
Yeah.
Man, dude, did you see how many details he had in that? Like, that blew my mind. Like the defense was great, but then everything else around it, you were like, oh, so I mean, that happened yesterday to me. Because Cody was my friend. Cody was there, and Cody came up under Master Sauer too. And me and Cody both looked at each other and we're like, "What the heck, man?" Like,
yeah. He kind of started showing it, and I was like, "Oh, this looks like the regular guillotine escape." And then, like you say, he went, "Oh, and this, and this. Oh, and then you do this. I better show that again because what about this? Let's look at this from this angle." Yeah.
And then he knew. He goes, I think I showed a lot right there. He said something like that, and we're like, "Yeah, you showed a ton."
Yeah, I've got 3 months worth of training just on that move.
Yeah. But he's always been like that. You know what I mean? Like, ever since I met him, like just moves that much better than everybody else. It's like beautiful to watch,
Yeah. It's that brain of his that won't stop.
Yeah. Man, it's kind of cool, like, quick story. So I did a camp down in Brazil at his camp. And it was the last year the Master Senior Worlds were at the Tijuca Tennis Club, which is really cool because, like, I had seen that place my whole time training. And I was like, man, I'd really like to go and compete there. And I was able to compete there that year. And it was the last year they had it there. And, but during that camp, he takes you all over and we go to Gracie Omaita. And man, like, he was another guy on the mat, with everybody else, just beating, and he was beating everybody up, and it was really cool to watch, because I seen him do it, when I was coming up, and then I hadn't seen him for a while. And then in Brazil, man, he was out there training with everybody, beating everybody up. So I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
He's still in there. He's still got it.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Thank you so much for doing this, Mike. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Well, I hope to see you guys, man. I hope to see you guys again sometime.
Yes, please.
If I make it out to your part of the world, if this all comes down, I've been traveling a lot lately, so I'm sure I'll be heading that way at some point when they open everything back up. I'll come in, I'll say hi to you guys and train with you guys.
That'd be great.
Love that.
More than welcome anytime. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Cool.
As this craziness is over.
Yeah, super grateful for your time today, Mike. Really, really appreciate it.
Anytime, bro. Good to see you. Good to see Robin.
Yeah, you take care of yourself and